Hello and welcome to our public program series, Indigenous Rights, Art, and Environmental Justice, taking place in conjunction with the exhibition, The Yanomami Struggle, which is on through April 16th. Please do stop by the exhibition if you haven't seen it already. My name is Tamara McCaw. I'm the Chief Civic Program Officer here at the Shed, and on behalf of our staff and partners, we're so grateful to have you all here with us to share space. As we collaborated with our partners on both the exhibition and the public programs, we were inspired to reflect on the connections between resource extraction that began in 1609 in the Lenape homeland where we live and work today, and the history that continues in the territory of the Yanomami. We are so grateful for the Lenape Center, who have organized today's program to share readings, which explores the personal journeys and history of the Lenape people that was recently published by the Lenape Center and the Brooklyn Public Library. To start our program, I'd like to welcome and introduce Joe Baker, who is the co-founder and executive director of the Lenape Center. Joe is also an artist, educator, curator, and activist who has been working in the field of Native arts for the past 30 years. Joe is joined by Kay Green, the seed growing program manager at the Hudson Valley Farm Hub. Kay is a tireless advocate. Kay just joked with me that he's also tired. Advocacy takes its toll. Kay's committed to seed sovereignty and the important role of art in celebrating our agricultural heritage. Thank you both so much for your partnership and collaboration. I will turn it over to Joe.
Thank you, everyone. It's wonderful to spend a bit of afternoon with you, so thank you for coming. As mentioned, my name is Joe Baker. I'm an enrolled member of the Delaware Tribe of Indians, whose headquarters are located in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. We are one of the 5 federally recognized Lenape nations that live in the diaspora after a forced removal from our homelands here, including Manhattan, the island of Manhattan. I'm co-founder and executive director of Lenape Center, which our organization is based here in Manhattan. Lenape Center was founded in 2009 with the express purpose of pushing back against the erasure of our presence here in the homeland. I'm a member of the Simon White Turkey family who arrived in Indian Territory in 1867 from the last federal reserve of the Lenape people, the main body, located in and around the present-day town of Lawrence, Kansas. I'm a direct line descendant of Lenape leaders, including Captain Anderson Sarcoxy, who was a signer of the Treaty of Greenville from the removal in the lands of the state of Ohio. 4th great-grandfather White Eyes, who in 1778 signed the first treaty with the newly formed U.S. government, the Treaty of Fort Pitt, which was to create a 14th all-Lenape state with representation in Congress. Of course, that treaty was never fulfilled, and that same year, 1778, Captain White Eyes was assassinated by the U.S. militia. 5th great-grandfather Netawati's, 6th great-grandfather Chief Nudamus, who was a consigner of the walking purchase, and the 7th great-grandfather Tamarin, Chief Tammany, who you might know as a citizen of the state of New York and city of Manhattan, Tammany Hall, which was recently renovated. And if you go and see the building, you'll see hovering above the top of the building is this glass turtle. And Lenape Center was consultants on that project. I want to share a story with you that comes from my home in Oklahoma. 40 years ago, Nora Thompson Dean drove a little Ford Falcon station wagon heading for her ancestral lands of New York and New Jersey, which her people called Lenapehoking. A member of the Delaware tribe of Indians in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, Dean described herself as a Lenape traditionalist and was one of the last fluent speakers of Lenape language. The purpose of her trip east was to attend the Lenape Indian Symposium at Seton Hall University, where she gave a paper. But a legend grew up around another leg of the trip, a meeting with the New York City mayor, Ed Koch, who only passed her briefly in the hallway for a photo op. It was the spring of 1981, and the Lenape Symposium at Seton Hall University was a great success with an overflow crowd of 800 people. A week later, one of her students recalled, "We went into the city of New York for a meeting with Mayor Ed Koch. Instead of Koch himself, an assistant finally turned up and gave Miss Dean a cheap souvenir for tourists." It really upset the group, particularly Nora's student who had arranged this meeting. And today I think about what kind of cultural return could have been jump-started 40 years ago at that exact moment if the group had been given a proper hearing. The welcome home gesture, or lack thereof, has been typical of New York institutions in light of Lenape Center's efforts to tell their own histories and offer their own cultural story in a city crowded with tales from everyone but its original people. As in the rest of the country, New York City is going through a racial and cultural reckoning. Everything from reckoning with looted artifacts in museums, Confederate and colonial monuments to oppressors and white supremacists, and printed and spoken land acknowledgments alerting audiences to the plunder that North American cities like New York are founded upon. Such actions call for questioning and meaning of the word territory within the colonial framework of private ownership. Just as Nora Thompson Dean broke the silence of 400 years of separation from the homeland, Lenape Center continues to shape the future of our understanding of place in the public consciousness. Founded in 2009, Lenape Center is a nonprofit arts and cultural organization whose mission is to continue Lenapehoking, to repair Lenapehoking, the Lenape homeland, through community, culture, and the arts. Based in Manhattan and led by a group of Lenape elders, we've created programs, exhibitions, workshops, land acknowledgments, symposia to continue our presence here and push back against the erasure and seed the ground for the return of Lenape people and Lenape consciousness for future generations. Territory, we think about it, can extend beyond the frame of real estate, something that New York City is very much attuned to, real estate, to include cultural space. It can shape ideas and transform one's understanding of the history and understanding of place. While the museum world is buzzing about looting of world cultures, what about the silence and erasure of the original people of New York? Why have the city's many museums and cultural organizations failed to honor this history. The Smithsonian going so far as to declare, quote, "The Lenape can never come home," end quote, while their National Museum of the American Indian rests on the actual footprint of the Dutch Fort Amsterdam, the colonizers who in 1609 set in motion a philosophy of the outsider by building the wall to keep the Lenape out, a metaphorical gesture that extends to present day. This may be changing due to the bravery and tenacity of the co-founders of Lenape Center who have been working to expand our awareness of cultural space. 4 individuals have been knocking on the cultural doors of the city of New York for over 13 years and recently found a friend at the Brooklyn Public Library. And I extend that friendship to the Shed because it is because of their efforts that I have the privilege and honor of being in this place with you today. Lenapehoking, the first Lenape-curated exhibit in New York at the Greenpoint branch, opened in January of 2023, and recent anthology of essays, which we have copies here for you to take as you leave today, includes, for the first time, first-person voice of Lenape scholars, historians, community members, artists, and others. It's truly changing history. An anthology that sets the record straight, helping to combat the ongoing violence still being committed against Indigenous people and tribal lands today. The first ever publication to include first-person voices is making way for new scholarship of Lenape presence, both past and present. It is being included in the courses at Columbia University, Teachers College, and SUNY Purchase, New York, as well as being distributed at the Brooklyn Law School. Other museums, including Morgan Library and Museum and the American Museum of the Natural History, are making way for Lenape-featured exhibitions in the coming years. And Federal Hall, National Museum of the American Indians' neighbor, while sharing space on Wall Street, is including Lenape voice for the first time ever in their upcoming celebration of George Washington and the formation of the United States government. This anthology will be made available to teachers and to the general public to provide a true and accurate history of the genocide and foundational acts that would become the United States of America. For all New Yorkers, this is a game changer, providing new insights into how one experiences daily life in the city, the ancestral homeland of Lenape. The site of first contact, the Lenape narrative animates the entire island of Manhattan and all 5 boroughs. Another change maker is the course Lenapehoking, Lenape Lifeways at Columbia University School of Social Work. Taught by myself and Adrian Koumans, it is our hope that this course might offer to students a way to navigate the turbulent waters caused by short-term thinking and disconnectedness from Earth. It has been challenging to secure the course within the curriculum of the School of Social Work. However, the value and importance of the course was recently demonstrated by the words of students responding in an essay to 3 of the central values shared in the class. It is our hope that no discussion of the idea of Lenape cultural space can be attempted without referencing the Lenape virtues, which inform every aspect of the spirit and energy of Lenape Lifeways. These same virtues play significantly in the behavior and conduct regarding all of life's expressions, Lenape values that have been fostered through sentiment and love within traditional families, contributing to the health and welfare of the greater community. These virtues are humility of spirit and conduct, exemplary, sincere behavior toward man, clean living, sobriety, altruism, consideration of the elderly and all people, those who are different than you, opposition of all forms of violence, a commitment to a lifestyle that promotes physical health and well-being. These values offer a powerful foundation for being in the world today. And I share those responses, student responses, with you tonight, this afternoon. We are all relatives. Respect all relations. This Lenape value stresses the interconnectivity of all things. Indeed, the land, the sky, and all of life exist as an interdependent, interconnected web where no single element or being was void of its own place and embodiment of spirit. This represents an appealing alternative solution to the toxic individualism created by the colonial capitalist reality today. We as a species have largely forgotten the right relationship we once had with the earth, while those who do remember have been stripped of the agency necessary to maintain that relationship. In short, when we left, the land noticed. Recognizing and remaking these connections are necessary to healing. Think good thoughts when we speak. This Lenape value stresses the importance of intentionality. For native languages, words create reality. They spawn it and are considered generative. The phrase, "speak something into existence," is not theoretical for Indigenous people, but the generative power for many must be coupled with the goodness of thought. It is perhaps unsurprising how destructive broken treaties have been for the Lenape people. Not only do they represent a collapse of trust, but they also stand as testament to the Dutch, British, and Americans saying the right things, but thinking bad thoughts. Good action cannot ultimately come from good words informed by bad thoughts. One must fully embrace and dedicate themselves to the words they speak. Otherwise, what are they worth? This next principle, I think, is very relevant today. Everyone has the ability to heal. This Lenape value stresses the capacity of all things to be whole again. And this man, Kay Green, offers seeds as a model for perseverance, as they are lost relatives with cultural resonance that can heal the historical traumas of separation from home and erasure. No matter the harm perpetuated or the time elapsed, no amount of fragmentation and annihilation can eternally incapacitate. Like seeds, we all carry with us the opportunity for regrowth. if only given the chance to reestablish our roots, culture is resistance. And from culture, too, may healing happen. We, as a global society, must no longer play favorites in whom we afford the opportunity to heal, and to what extent. In closing, as we reflect upon these Lenape values, let us remember that ultimately healing means reclaiming our right to be who we are. For the Lenape, this act of reclamation requires a return to the homeland, a return to the arms of Mother Earth, who have held our people for time immemorial, and the true recognition of our territory, Lenapehoking. Let us each strive every day to give grace to all of life's wonders, our families, our friends, our neighbors. Only then can we foster an environment of healing. Wanishi. We're going to talk about seeds.
So, does everyone have their seed? Has anyone lost their seed yet? Okay, good. So, I'm very grateful for being here. I'm very grateful for the partnership we have with the Lenape Center. My preference is doing these kinds of things in the field. So I brought some of the field here in the form of seeds. Before we get to talking too much about seeds, I'd like each of you to spend a little bit of time with your seed. So if you can put your seed in your palm and just keep your palm open.
If you don't have a seed, fake it.
There's seeds here too. There's a bowl, so you can raise your hand if you need a seed.
We're very much aware that, the shed is a performance space, so we felt that we had to step it up and bring seeds with us.
Oh. Maybe I should jump in.
Angel, do you need a seed? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Kay.
All right, so open palm, one seed, your one seed in your hand. And just close your eyes. And see if you can feel the seed in your palm. Can you feel any weight? Can you feel texture? Or is it so light that you can't feel it at all? And And then take that seed and start feeling it with the tips of your fingers. What can you learn about the seed with your eyes closed, just from touching it? What other senses could you use to meet the seed in your hands? Does it have a smell? If you put it against your cheek, what would it feel like? You can open your eyes and look at your seed too, and really get up close and personal with it. What can you learn about it from looking at it? Some of you, if you're gardeners or farmers, maybe have gotten up close and personal with seeds, but many people no longer have the opportunity to really be close to a seed. And when we listen to stories in history from the Lenape Center and from many other cultures, one of the first things that happens when colonizers take land or seek to dominate is the separation of people and their seeds. This takes place in the burning of fields, in the outlawing of planting certain seeds like amaranth, for example, with the Spanish conquistadors, punishable by death to be caught planting amaranth or saving amaranth seeds. And forced diasporas in many cultures across the world create a separation, a loss. It is very difficult to keep your seeds alive when you're forced to move and move again in the middle of multiple genocides. And yet, the seeds are still here with us. The seeds have endured this the same way that people have endured this. So, what I'd like to offer before we move on too much is for all of us to have the opportunity to call in our ancestors as we have this seed in our hands. All of us come from people who were seed savers. We would not be here, and the seeds would not be here without that legacy. Even if us or our parents or grandparents, for many different reasons, were a break in that legacy, a break in that chain of handing seeds from hand to hand, generation to generation. When we look at a map of the world, or when I look at a map of the world, I think about where plants came from. In different parts of the world, different species of plants co-evolved with humans and were cultivated and domesticated in relationship with people. So if you know where your ancestors are from, you can actually look at a map and you can think about what were the seeds of my people and where are those seeds today. So just take a moment with your seed, unlikely to be the seeds of your people, but maybe, but still an opportunity to call in an ancestor. Is there someone that you knew of your family who was a gardener or who was a farmer or who was the main person who thought about cultural foodways and fed you and your family? Who is that person? If you don't know your people because of separation, it's okay to use your heart and your imagination to call in your ancestors, even if you don't know them. They will hear you through this seed. And you may not know what this seed grows or the variety that you have in your hand. One of the few things we can know holding a seed is that someone held this seed before us, and that this seed is in our hands because someone saved seeds and passed those, and someone grew those and saved seeds and passed those. So many, many hands. The seed has felt the pulse of many people before us, thousands of years of people before us, in order to be in this present moment in your palm. So what I'd like you to do, if you're near someone that you don't know, you can do it with someone you do know if you want to, but if you're near someone that you don't know, I'd like you to turn to them. Tell them one thing you learned about the seed in your hand. It could be something you felt, it could be something emotional or resonant, it could be something physical about the seed. Just take 1 minute, turn to that person, tell them one thing you learned about your seed. I love this noise. I love this noise. When I get people to talk about seeds with each other. His hair. Yeah, I miss my hair. Okay, go ahead and come back. Thank you for sharing with someone. And then with that person that you were talking to, here, I'll demonstrate with Joe what we're going to do. So Joe, if you hold your seed in one hand and bring it here, and put out your other palm, I'm going to take this seed that's in my palm here, and I'm giving this to Joe. And Joe is going to give me his seed. So go ahead and do that with the person you were just talking to.
Just a little angry dude.
Calendula.
Spiky.
All right, so how did that feel? How did it feel to give your seed that you just got to know to someone else? And there's too many people here to go around the circle and share that, but I'll share some of the responses I get when we do this. Some folks are pretty pissed. They got very attached to their seed, and they did not want to give their seed to someone else. Some people receiving the seed get scared. Oh, now it's my responsibility to take care of this seed that I know you were attached to, and now it's in my hands. Some people really love giving, and they love the feeling of sharing something that they love with someone else. So there's all different emotional responses to this activity, and yet this is how we have seeds. The open palm, your open palm, this is the first vessel. Before we had stone, before we had clay, before we had gourds. This vessel is an invitation. I'm able to give others, feed others, and I'm able to receive from others. That's the open vessel, that form. And so you were just practicing something as ancient as humans, and you were experiencing what's in all of our DNA, which is saving seeds and sharing seeds. That's life. And the last thing I want folks to think about with your seed is that this is alive. Part of the erasure of people and their seeds, part of the loss and grief of that is the commodification of seeds, turning seeds into something that is just about profit, about being bought and sold, and isn't a relative that is part of our legacy as humans, our connection to our ancestors, and our ability to take care of each other. So this is a living being in your hand. So on the way out, we're going to talk a little bit more about seeds, but on the way out, I'd like everyone to return your seed to the bowl. This bowl has been through, I don't know, hundreds of this activity, and the imprint of your pulse, of your hand and your skin on this seed is going to be part of the experience of the next folks to do this with me.
So Kay, I would like to share with you the lady, Nora Thompson Dean, who drove to New York in the little Ford Falcon station wagon 40 years ago for a meeting with Mayor Koch, who didn't show up, is the person responsible for seed saving Lenape blue corn, sasapsing, in our community. Upon her passing in 1983, she secured those seeds at the University of Iowa in a seed bank. And 3 years ago, we began our project, Lenape Center, with this man, Kay Green, and Farm Hub. We accessed seeds from her seed saving, and we brought those seeds, our ancestors, our relatives, home to New York, and we planted those seeds here in the soil. That first year, we had enough seeds for 120 plants. Last year, last harvest, we had enough seeds for 5 acres. So these little guys are powerful, and they're generous. And there's so much that we can learn from that generosity and from that life force that we all have access to.
Yeah. I've been growing seeds.
Just one other thing.
Yeah,
I get crazy here. So I've learned so much working with Kay and Farm Hub and seed rematriation. I've been in the museum world for many, many years as a curator and as a museum director, and I was totally unaware that there are actual seed collectors and that they collect seeds like artifacts, like precious objects, and it's a whole world, of a collector's world. It's sort of a secret world where things are exchanged and held like property. One such place is the American Museum of Natural History here in New York. So I was visiting the collections of Lenape material, and there were some expected objects as they're defined in the museum world. I like to think of them as belongings as opposed to objects. So I'm in the collections area and I see corn on a shelf. Corn. And I said, "What's that?" And the curator said, "Well, it's corn. I'm not sure what that is. I mean, why it's here." So we went to that shelf, we looked at the corn, we read the provenance. It was collected in 1920 from one of our communities and had been static and dormant on the shelf of the museum since that time forward. So I said, "Give me those seeds." And they said, "Well, what?" You know, it set in motion a whole discussion about how that could not happen. And it could not happen because it would fall in the category of destructive analysis, and it would require certain permits and permissions, et cetera. And I said, "Folks, look what a PR opportunity you have. Because if you give me 5 seeds, and let's test the seeds and see if they are viable. And if they are, you have the opportunity to tell the world that you have a living collection, that you have returned and repatriated seeds to their proper home." That's a great opportunity. I'm still working on it. They're like, "Well, maybe."
So an example of the generosity that we're talking about, seeds are exponential generosity. We're in our 10th year of partnership with the Akwesasne Seed Hub, Mohawk community in Akwesasne. There's a red corn. We started with 2 ears. There were only 2 ears of that corn left. by our third year producing that corn, we had produced about 8,000 pounds. So the opportunity not only to increase seed, but for that to become a way to revive cultural foodways, to be also a food, ancestral food that feeds people, it's there. And I think sometimes, when we look at the world around us and we're like, I'm just one little person, like what can I do with these huge global issues, including loss of genetic diversity and agrobiodiversity? With seeds, we actually have the opportunity to turn that around. Like it is there in the seed. And so part of what we do with seed rematriation work is every partnership is different. It's not just like one thing and one way of doing things. So our partnership with the Lenape Center is very specific. We center leadership with the organizations that we're working with. The goals and the values and the contemporary state of that organization and those people has to be taken into account in terms of what varieties, what our goals are, how much we're producing, the skills and infrastructure that are needed within the home community. Seed sovereignty isn't about doing this for other people. Seed sovereignty is making sure that home communities have the ability to do this for themselves. And so depending on the history of that community, one of the challenges that Joe and I often talk about is multiple forced removals. We're looking at an incredibly fractured diaspora when we're looking at Lenape history, and not having a continual presence on the homeland. And so while some communities we work with have land, have access to land, and are able to start growing themselves, we have a lot of work to do with the Lenape Center and presence here. So our first steps are really about where are the seeds? Can we find the seeds? Mm-hmm. And increasing the number of seeds so that we can start to share those in different ways. And so we are early on, we're in our fourth year together. Right. In seed time, that's a very short amount of time. We're still at the beginning of this. But I also want to say that seed rematriation is about relationships. So relationships with the seeds, but these partnerships also take time because we need to do a lot of trust building. It is a lot to be entrusted with the seeds of a culture that is not my own. And so we really have to work very closely together for the Lenape Center to feel comfortable with us growing the seeds, and for us to feel comfortable that what we're doing is responsible and ethical and in line with the values that Joe shares with us and the guidance of Joe and Curtis and others from Lenape Center.
And also regarding the seeds, there are the accompanying songs and dances that accompany the seeds. So it very much is about the return of a culture and a cultural presence. It's very much about reestablishing that true sense of place. And the human spirit is always sort of heat-seeking. We're all hoping to find that center and that place of our belonging. And I think seeds have become a very important part of that homecoming for Lenape and Lenape people. I want to share with you now from the Anthology, and we have on a table as you leave the theater space today, copies for you. So please take one. They're available for you. I was thinking about the exhibit, the Yanomami exhibit, and actually I was here for the opening, and I had this beautiful opportunity to have an exchange with the Yanomami people, who had traveled here. And this sense that I had was that part of the challenges of the people today, the Yanomami, we experienced hundreds of years earlier. And for me and my family, I'm going to share a very personal story. It goes back to the turn of the century, 1900s, the very beginning of 1900, when we found ourselves removed once again to allotment lands in Indian Territory, which later became the state of Oklahoma. That was after 5 forced removals from the homeland here. So when we arrived in Oklahoma, we became, because of the Dawes Act, which incidentally was authored here in the state of New York at Mohonk House, which is just north of New Paltz. It was an act by the federal government that was an attempt to make farmers of Indians in sort of a brushstroke, a large brushstroke. But it was really about opening up millions and millions of acres of excess land for white settlement. So my family arriving in Indian Territory collectively received through the Allotment Act some 6,000 acres of land, which later became oil producing. The first strike, I think it was 1902 in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, was the Nellie Johnstone well, which set forth in motion a tsunami of entrepreneurs and individuals who were oil thirsty. The primary purpose of accessing those allotment lands for capitalist gain. So what was set in motion in 1609 right here on the shores of this island followed our people, my people, all the way to Oklahoma with the discovery of oil in Oklahoma. Phillips Petroleum Company, which is headquartered, was at that time in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, its first strike was on the allotment of my community members' Anna Davis allotment. So I want to share this story of my grandmother. The unanswered questions surrounding my grandmother's allotment and her sudden 1924 death by poisoning haunted me as a child and haunt me still. I keep coming back to her as a story of Lenape diaspora, a story of greed and lawlessness on Indian lands and the wreckage of lives upended. The same practices that unraveled life for our ancestors and saw our forced removal from our lands in the Northeast followed us through the generations to Oklahoma. A silence erasing the genocide that haunts American history and identity. My grandmother, Stella White Turkey Fugate, identified by the U.S. government as Delaware Roll Number 31156, Certificate of Homestead Allotment Number 16480, and her 80.95 acres of land are where my family story begins in 1904, Indian Territory. Lands allotted to the 5 civilized tribes tended to be homestead, with restrictions on alienation, giving away the lands. In this case, the 80.95 acres was the homestead allotment of Stella White Turkey Fugate granted by the Cherokee Nation. In total, 6,000 acres of oil-producing land was allotted to the White Turkey family and oil and gas leases were granted by James R. Fugate, Stella's father, as guardian of her estate. But in the land records in Washington County, no appointment as guardian to grant oil and gas leases on Cherokee property, nor legal guardianship of Stella Fugate's estate exist. Oklahoma statutes specifically prohibit parental alienation of a child's land without action under law. Even if the oil and gas lease was otherwise valid, which is questionable, it was granted for a specific term of years, and there is no record of it having been renewed. Did the 1904 oil and gas lease expire in 1915, or was it voided by non-consent of title holders on assignment? Why were assignments of the 1904 lease not recorded until 1940? Upon execution of a defaulted mortgage after a sheriff's sale, all the surplus land allotted to Stella White Turkey Fugate was deeded to Cecil Peters in January of 1932. None of the heirs of Stella Fugate Wright was a majority, but were represented by Lily White Turkey Fugate, my great-grandmother, as guardian. The legality of a sheriff's sale to satisfy the mortgage is highly questionable. The minor children were not bound by the sale because the mortgage recorded in 1922 was partially released in 1924. The mortgage under which the action arose was not recorded, and there is no record of guardianship over the heirs of Stella Fugate Wright Shaw, even though it may have been de facto guardianship. Stella's son, Wilbur Wright, was victim of a gruesome murder in 1934. Was this somehow tied to a series of land grabs and defaulted mortgages involving individuals and banks? The continuous lease swapping beginning in 1904 with the Cherokee Development Company for oil production and complex series of deeds, right-of-ways, and interest assignments. These were all executed by James R. Fugate in 1914 and involved Prairie Pipeline Company with a lease issued to Tidal Oil Company that year. And there's a succession of trading here that I'm going to read through. The lease was later transferred to the Federal Oil and Gas Company in 1916, Tidal Oil Company again in 1918, to Hoyt Oil Company in 1932, Sinclair Refinery Company in 1937, Tidal Oil Company again in 1944, to Hoyt Oil Company, then 7 Point Development Company, then to J.W. Nepper in 1972, to E.J. Wagner in 1977, then Magana Mortgage to First National Bank City in 1978, to Arco Pipeline Company, Tomahawk Pipeline Company, and finally, Magana Interstate, all in 1978. On April 6, 1971, an emergency order directing remedial work on the allotment was before the Corporation Commission of the State of Oklahoma. It states that one Donald W. Wood was engaged in water flooding operations in that area, and that this injection of fluids had contributed to the pressure causing the leakage of salt water and oil from the wells. He was charged with the duty of plugging, replugging, and repairing wells to remedy the situation. He failed to do so, resulting in an emergency state of irreparable injury to the lands requiring immediate action. By 1970, at long last, the Stella White Turkey Fugate allotment was under the care and jurisdiction of my mother, Liberty Wright Baker, and the land seemed to be at peace. No longer active oil production, the wells were capped, some mitigation of the saltwater damage had been completed, and the land was leased for farming. Rotating crops of alfalfa and soybeans, they grew strong in the fertile river bottomlands of the Caney River. But wait. In 2004, 90 years after Prairie Pipeline had constructed a pipeline without authorization through the allotments, the Plains All-American Pipeline, LP, announced its plan to construct, own, and operate 100 miles of pipeline to transport crude oil from the terminal in Cushing, Oklahoma, to the Broome Station in Coffeyville, Kansas. This would follow the exact path of the 1914 pipeline, cutting a diagonal line across the Stella White Turkey Fugate allotment. Until her death in 2004, Liberty Wright Baker was in the courts fighting the pipeline. The courts ruled in favor of All Plains American Pipeline LP, citing the unauthorized 1940 right-of-way on Indian lands granted to Prairie Pipeline, and the pipeline was constructed without permission. Beginning, and we all are so aware of this, in 2016, the Dakota Access Pipeline protest brought national and international attention to pipelines, but countless thousands of individual protests among Native families, like those of the White Turkey Fugate family, have been underway for generations. The history of ongoing violence directed toward Native people and Native lands is unrecognized by the general population and is the first genocide of the founding of the United States of America. These stories are largely unknown, and these stories must be heard today. Wanishi. We have a few minutes for questions, and if you have any questions or comments, we're happy to take those. And those of you who have to leave, thank you so much for being here today.
I have a microphone, so I'll just walk to people.
Hi. There's a bowl, and so if you put your seeds back in the bowl on your way out, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Last night I tried to read about forced relocations in this continent. I was interested about how people in Oklahoma, Native American groups, aren't necessarily friendly to Native American groups that didn't go along one of the major forced relocations. Right now there's a group in New Jersey that claims Native American heritage, and they're not being recognized by their cousins in Oklahoma. And because the cousins in Oklahoma were forced to relocate, they're a recognized tribe because there's paperwork involved with their relocation. That means that they're, at least according to the logic of the federal government in the United States, that means they're able to get some federal subsidies, some federal grants, and to get access to low interest or no interest loans. It's also their ability to open a casino should they care to do such a thing. I was just wondering how your organization helps other like straggler groups of your population group not only reconnect with their heritage or their language or life rituals that are common in your culture, but also how are you bringing those people into to be recognized for the financial as well as the cultural benefits? And how do you, as a person, determine what's indigenous? Do you have like the Bureau of American Indian Affairs, do you have a sort of a blood kind of definition, the way those old folks, that old mentality has? Do you believe that like a person who is raised in an indigenous household, if he's only 1/16th, let's say by genetics, Native American, should he also enjoy the benefits of some sort of federal designation as an Indian group or an Indian person?
Well, those are many questions in one question. So what I can say regarding the first part of your question with the groups I think you're referring to in New Jersey, I cannot speak for them. I can only speak for my community, the Delaware Tribe of Indians, and those communities of the 5 federally recognized groups that we are in relationship with and to. So, I believe that we all have our own stories, but I can't comment on someone else's story.
I mean, they're a Delaware Indian group, this group is in New Jersey. And there's already a difference in the communities because one community has an advantage over the other community. Instead of creating a cultural brotherhood, you're creating divisions within this one cultural group. So you're not serving your purpose as an organization that's effective. You're actually, in some ways, it's creating more division.
As a non-native person, I don't think it's your place to tell an organization what they should or shouldn't do or what their values should be.
Ask the question so I can learn how to perhaps ask a better question in the future. And I am a citizen of the United States, and as such, I should be responsible partly for what my U.S. government does. So I feel responsible for the actions of the U.S. government, at least partially. So what I'm asking you is, why is there, it seems like there's a division in how, what people want to say, what's a real Indian or not?
Well, I think my comment would be to you is that in your mind and through your eyes, there is a division. Whether or not that division exists within our communities is not something for you to comment on.
You don't think I can comment on the U.S. government and the policy?
Sorry, we need to make sure there's more questions. No, thank you.
Conversation in my question, and he's taking my words and he's turning them into
Thank you. We need to make sure that everyone can get questions. I believe we've answered it. Next question up here. Thank you, sir.
You are aggressive and disruptive and being disrespectful.
Can I say something? I was educated about 60 years ago,
Wait, okay, there, I see you.
and the grade school that I had and the school textbooks that
Yes.
we had painted a very Arcadian picture of the Indians that lived here. And I'm just wondering, is there anything that your organization is doing to sort of correct that narrative in the textbooks of second graders, third graders, fourth graders?
We're working currently with Teachers College, Columbia University, and we have developed a new Lenape curriculum that will be introduced to the public school system June 8th to teachers. So we've been very conscious of the misinformation or lack of information that is inherent within our school system, and we're hoping that this, and the Anthology has been, instrumental in informing that. So I think we're going to see some real progress and change ahead. Also, we are working with the American Museum of Natural History to recreate an alcove exhibit regarding the Lenape people and the history in the cultural hall, which is in much need of and the museum agrees, in much need of revitalization. It hasn't been touched in 50 years.
There's a question up here.
Hi, I just wanted to thank both of you so much for this incredibly special afternoon. And
Thank you. Thank you.
I think we've got one last one over here.
I like the seeds.
I love that. Yeah.
Joe, anything else before we close out? No. Oh, can we get one more?
Okay. All right.
I feel like Oprah.
Good afternoon. I thought it was fascinating when you made the comment that the Yanomamis' struggle today resembles you of the struggle of the Lenape people of hundreds of years ago, or many, many years ago. And what I was curious about was, given the perspective that your generation of Lenape people have today about what happened all these years and all the struggles that you went through, is there a number of advice or some advice that you can give to the Yanomami people that are only starting to get organized and fight for their rights very recently? Is there an opportunity perhaps for you, your organization, to create a link, a strong link with the Yanomami people, and perhaps pass on some of the learning so that their struggle somehow is not that long, that can be somehow benefited from everything that your organization learned and your generation of Lenapes learned over the years?
Well, I thank you for that comment, and I would agree that there are certainly parallels, irregardless of the number of years that have separated our experiences. And one thing that I know from the conversation the night of the opening with those representatives that were here from the Yanomami community was that they know the strength and the value of the arts as a language to push back against the violence that's being inflicted upon their people. And this exhibit is one of those expressions, a very powerful expression. And I think that if they continue to continue to utilize that tool, great progress can be made. And I think it's very important that our cultural organizations and institutions create a platform, an open door, so that those discussions can happen. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us. Another round of applause for Joe and Kay.